Hey, what's up, guys and girls? It's Oraclebot here, and today we're going to be talking about post-processing effects that you see in FL Studio from your delays, ambience, distortion, the dynamics, the filters, the flanger, and some of the miscellaneous ones, and the gain. So to get started, I'll just start off with distortion because it's one of the more basic ones, and to do that, I'm going to be using 3XOC today. Just load up a sine wave, because I find using a sine wave is the easiest way to show what distortion does. And you'll see in this wave candy up here and then the Parametric EQ what distortion does to a pure perfect tone that is the sine wave. So to route it into the mixer, I can either just open up the sine wave and hit the track button. But since I already have one over here ready, I'm just going to move it back because you can move this dial to choose a mixer track. So that's how you can route stuff in the mixer. So here we have a sine wave, and this is what it sounds like. I'm playing really low frequencies. I'll play up in octaves for those of you who have headphones. But as you can see, there's a sine wave. It's a pure tone, just doing what it does. And then we're going to put distortion on it. We're going to use the wave shaper. I'm going to start with the wave shaper so you can see exactly what distortion does to the sine wave. And to start off, we're going to do something called like hard clipping, where you just push the sine wave. As you can see, the harder I hard clip it, the more the sine wave becomes like a square wave. And when I do it all the way, it does become a square wave. So if I turn the distortion off and play a square wave after you just heard that, I'm going to go back to sine wave because I just played a square wave and turn the distortion on. There's no difference. So when you hard clip something all the way, it becomes more of a square wave. When you distort a sine wave, it just gets square wave harmonics because it is one harmonic. The type of harmonics you're going to get out of a sound depends on the harmonics it has when you push into distortion. So there's like one of the main types of distortion is hard clipping. And you have another type that's called like soft clipping. If you watch the sine wave, you can see what happens. You can see it adds harmonics, but it also gets smaller. And it has a slightly more squarish shape. It's really subtle, but it's there. Soft clipping is another type of distortion that you could use to get different sounds. Soft clipping is used a lot when people are trying to emulate like a tape style distortion, I want to say. To achieve the tape style distortion, it's a little more like that, because when tape is converted to digital, sometimes the signal will get pushed in the middle and it creates this type of a distortion that's different. If you want to look at all the different types of distortions there are, though, there's places you can go and look at that. There's a million kinds of distortions. Well, not millions, but there's a lot you can go look at. So instead of going on forever about this, I'm just going to talk about the asymmetrical side, because you already saw with regular mode how it affects the entire waveform. But asymmetrical mode will give you control, and to turn it asymmetrical, you just click the switch down here and it's asymmetrical. This gives you control of the top of the waveform and the bottom of the waveform. If you want to see what I mean, you can just watch as I mess with it. As you can see, I just made the top side like a square wave, and the bottom is still a sine, because I just messed with the top. And now I'm going to mess with the bottom. And you can also do something called rectifying, is where you push a waveform on the negative or positive polarity to the opposite side. So like here, I'm going to pull the bottom to the top. And you can see there's no more signal on the bottom side, it's all on the top, the positive polarity, because I pulled the bottom side up to the top. And you can even do some crazy stuff where you just go multiple times, and you make like a Batman looking thing. And this all started as just a sine wave, and this is messing with distortion. But now you got a basic idea of what distortion does. And the Wave Shaper is great because you can actually draw and create your own distortions. And I use it as a teaching tool so you understand kind of what it does to an audio signal. And then we can go look at the other distortions that Fruity Loops has. So we have the fastest, and you can see you got a Wave Shaper here on the right, and it just does different kinds of distortions. And it'll, you know what different shapes do? As you mess with like this one, you can just see, you understand it better how to use it. And they also have the Blood Overdrive. Overdrive is a type of distortion that it just basically pushes the audio signal in without clipping it, quote, quote, over 0 dB, but it will push it like it is going up against the top, and it'll squish the waveform, as you can see. And then there's a post filter on here so you can take away high harmonics. I mean, that's what I'm pretty sure Overdrive does. It just pushes it and it does a little something else that I'm not exactly sure, but I know what it does, like when I hear it. So I use it, especially when I want to get more guitar type tones out of a synth. I'll use the Blood Overdrive because it's great for doing that. We have the Saath Clipper, which I told you about before. Which just does soft clipping. And then another type of distortion we have is called bit crushing. The Fruity Squeeze does this, but I find it easier to use the bit crusher and effector. So do that, you just load up effector, you go to lo-fi, and I just kind of moved it under there. And you go to lo-fi, you turn off the bypass, because bypass means the effect will only be enabled when you click and move the matrix. So just turn it off so it's always on. And you can see bit crusher is different because it actually crushes the signal. And the bit crusher is how you get that ya-ya bass. If you ever wonder how that classic dubstep ya-ya bass that you've heard a million times, you load up a saw wave, which I'm just going to do another 3XOSC here. I'm going to put it in the same track as this one, number 6. And then you put a low pass filter on it with heavy resonance. I'm sure you all have heard that dubstep bass before. That's all it is. It's a saw wave, low pass filter with heavy resonance and bit crusher. That's how you get the classic dubstep ya-ya bass. So there's a cool tip for you. But the bit crusher is a cool sound. It makes it sound like a video game. Very broken and chiptune-y. And that's what you can use the bit crusher for. I really like effector because it's just fast and easy, and you can mess around and find a different setting to use for whatever you want. And now that we talked about distortion, I'm going to move on as I go through my notes. Number 2, which fell on the floor, which is delay, ambience, and reverb. And this is a really easy one. I'm going to go to a different waveform, like something that has a lot more harmonics. I'm actually going to do a saw wave and turn the volume down a little bit. So here I have a saw wave. Delay is really easy to explain. I'm just going to load up Fruity Delay 2. And as you can tell when I play the note, it delays after it. You can mess with the time settings, which is how fast it bounces. So if I play some metronome, it's doing 3/16 notes, but you right click and go to set. You can do like 8th notes, which is also 2 steps. You can also do 1 step, which is a 16th note. And you can do like quarter notes. You have half notes. And if you move the time knob with the left click of the mouse and you look up at the top left of the screen, you see how it says 8, and then 9 and 10, and it just goes by steps or 16th notes, and you can create different delays like that, and that takes a really long time. But I'm gonna move it back to 3 because 3 16th note delay is pretty good. And then if you want to get that ping pong effect, because you can tell right now it's just straight mono, or if you move the pan on the input, it'll just move it to one side. To get that ping pong effect, you actually click on ping pong, move the panning, and as far as you move the panning knob is how hard it'll go. Feedback is how long the delay will go on. If you have it all the way up, it'll actually go forever. But we don't want that. I'll move it back down in the middle. The volume is how loud the wet signal is, and if you don't know what wet signal and dry signal is the incoming signal. So if you think of slot 1 as like where the signal comes in and starts, the signal that's going in is the dry signal, and a wet signal is what comes out of the effect. So the delay itself is the wet signal, and I can turn it dry off, so you just hear delay. But if I turn the volume on the wet signal down, which is also the input, you just hear the dry. So if you ever hear the terms wet and dry, wet is the effect itself, and dry is the incoming signal behind the effect. So that's what that means. But yeah, to create a delay ping pong like that, you just do that. The cut is actually low pass filter on the delay, so you can have like less harmonics on the delay. That's what that does. The offset will give stereo to the delay itself, which can be kind of fun. And I'm going to load up a default setting patch of the delay because there's something really cool I want to show you. If you ever want to get like a cool effect out of a delay, if you move the time up past 1 and you move it to like 1 or 9 or these really fast amounts, you can get this cool effect out of the delay. It just adds these cool tones, and it sounds great on some basses. I would recommend trying it out on basses that you create. But probably won't sound good on all of them, but it might sound good on others. So I recommend messing with a fast delay time on different basses, because you actually might get cool sounds out of it. And it's worth a try. You can also, if you don't want the entire effect itself, remember you can always mess with the mix level, or just hit the volume on the input here to do the same thing. Alright, so now that you know what delay is, I'm going to talk about reverb. Reverb is how you get the sound like it sounds in a room or in a space, and I'm going to use a saw wave here to demonstrate. Reverb, as you can see, it just sounds like it's in a room or a space. Early reflection level, I'll let you hear what it does, because it's kind of hard to explain, just gotta hear it. You can kind of hear it changes the tone of the reverb a little bit. The wet, again, is what loud the reverb is, and dry is the incoming signal. And if you turn it off, you can just hear the reverb. I'll pull it back down though. Size is the space, the size of the room that you're hearing. I'll turn the decay up. The decay is how long the reverb goes on. You can hear how when you change the size of a room, the tone of the reverb changes. And I'm gonna play some like bass range notes, because when you mess with diffusion changes like how many sides there are to the reverb. So the higher up it is, the more lush the reverb. But the less sides you give, the harsher the reverb gets. You can hear it's a little harsher. This is bouncing off less sides. When you turn it up, it gets more lush. Low cut it's like a high pass on the reverb. So the higher you have it up, the less low frequencies you are. And the high cut is like a low pass on the reverb, and you can turn that up. Delays how long it takes the reverb to start. And if you click this T here, this will make it a tempo pace delay. So when you move it again, you look at the top left, you can see it's 16th notes, just like the delay. Cross is the where the if you just play with it, you can hear it messes with the stereo of a reverb. The bass is how much bass there is in a reverb. This is the stereo separation knob. If you turn it to the right, it makes the reverb mono. If you turn it left, it gives it stereo. So it makes it more left to right. And usually, it depends on the sound, but I like a little bit of stereo separation on reverb just to make it a little more lush and wide. And damping, you can really hear what damping is when you have the high cut up, because damping to me adds like a shimmer, especially on the high end of the sound. You can hear that shimmer on the top. That's what damping does, it adds that nice shimmer. And that's reverb right there. And then next kind of reverb we have is the Convolve Er. The Fruity Convolve Er is a type of reverb that is unique because unlike the Fruity reverb, which uses algorithms to generate reverb, the Fruity Convolve Er uses impulses, which are audio samples. And you can actually view the ones that come with FL Studio by hitting this button right here. And you have a whole bunch. You got chambers, exteriors, effects. When you listen to these just a bunch of like weird sounds. But it's just like impulses of rooms. Like they just make a quick sound, like a finger snap or something, and to record the sound of the room, which is the impulse. And you can just load it up in the Fruity Convolve Er. And then I played the saw wave through here. Again, the wet is the level of the reverb itself. The dry is the original, and you can turn it off. And the in right here lets you do stereo separation of the incoming signal, but since it's a saw wave and it's mono, moving either way is not going to do anything. The wet, you can give it stereo or make it mono. The delay is how long it takes for the reverb to start. The self-convolve will make the reverb onto itself, which can be interesting. The stretch will make it longer, and you can pull it back to make it shorter. The EQ right here is actually a really neat thing, because with the EQ, you can actually make your own EQ curve for the reverb itself. And the EQ in Fruity Convolve Er is special because it's a linear EQ, which means I can draw these straight down lines, that will allow you to just do crazy stuff you can never do with a regular EQ. Regular EQs are parametric EQs, and they're never like perfectly straight when they cut. They're always going to be curved a little bit. And then the linear EQ will just cut it straight. The only downside of linear EQs is that they have latency, so there's a little bit of lag in them. It doesn't really matter for the reverb, but if you're ever like trying to mix stuff, that's why linear EQs are never really used, because there's lag. And they're also, I believe, they might be a little CPU more intensive, but anyway, that's just linear EQ. And you can do a little more research about different EQs, graphic EQ, parametric EQ, all that. But it's really cool. You can draw your own EQ profiles. And you don't have to use impulses for the reverb. You can actually use any audio sample you want. You could even like let's go to the packs. That comes FL Studio. Vocals.
Come on.
You can throw in a vocal sample like that. And just get interesting results. You can try messing around, see if you get anything interesting. But yeah, that's the Fruity Convolve Er. And next, we're gonna go on to effects like chorus, flanger, and phaser. Again, using the saw wave. I'm gonna load up the Fruity chorus. Now, when you get the chorus, oops, just bumped my mic. You have delay. You have depth, stereo. You have all these knobs. And how the chorus works, it's like, if you remember on 3XOSC, the phase offset and detune, how it makes a copy of the waveform and it'll mess with the phase of it. Well, the chorus does that. It'll make a copy of the waveform, and the delay is how delayed it is for it to start. The depth is how much pitch difference there'll be, and LFO controls different parameters to help you shape the chorus itself. The stereo is how much stereo separation there is. The cutoff is a high pass filter for the chorus. And the LFO waves here, you can change it between sine to sine cubed and multi-sine to multi-sine cubed. Honestly, I have no idea what those waveforms look like, but you can just experiment with the LFOs, their frequencies, the pitch, or how fast they move. And you can experiment this and come up with different chorus. And if you're not sure where to go with the chorus, you can look at the presets. And they got different things. And the preset, the polychorus, it's pretty neat because it lets you kind of create a super saw if you mess with the settings, like because it will detune the saw wave, which kind of makes it a super saw. But again, it's easier to use just the detune and a couple saw waves and detune them. But you can also kind of achieve that with the chorus, kind of a super saw effect because it detunes the sound. As I look at my notes, so I don't forget anything. Next is the flanger. Where is it? There it is. The flanger, again, you see the delay in depth. Well, how the flanger works, the flanger is actually a delay itself, but it's a really fast one. It makes a copy of the signal like the last one. And what it does is it's like the time of the copied signal being delayed is what's being automated. That's what makes the flange effect. So to think of this, if we go back to the delay, it's like having the time knob really fast, but slowly moving it at these small values, as you can see in the top left corner up here. I'm going like to 20 or 15 and back to 1. That's what the flanger kind of does. It moves a copy of the signal really fast, which gives it that flanger effect. The delay is how delayed the copied signal is. The depth is how far it'll go. The rate is the pitch of the LFO, so how fast it'll go. And you can change the shape of the LFO between sine wave and triangle. The damping will just change the tone of the flanger. The phase is the starting position of the copied signal. The feed is how hard the flanger will be. The wet, you can change the wet level, how much the flanger, the outcoming of just the wet of the flanger is. The dry is the incoming signal. The cross will mess with the stereo separation of the flanger. The invert wet, what this does is it will take the positive polarity of the wet signal of the flanger. So you remember your sine wave, you got your sideways S, and you have the positive polarity and negative polarity. Well, inverting does, it'll flip the positive to the negative and the negative to the positive. And it's going to do the same thing with feedback. Feedback is actually more like of a resonance, in my opinion. But that's what the flanger does. And next we have the phaser, which is another basic effect that you will see in synthesizers. Again, you got the sweep frequency, which is the speed of the LFO. You got the min depth, so how far down the phaser will go. The max depth is how far it will go. The stereo is how much stereo separation is. The NR stages is how many holes in the sound there will be, because you can see a phaser creates holes in the sound if you look at the EQ. And NR stages is how many holes there are. The frequency range is just how much frequencies the phaser will cover. Small is small, and then large is large, which is a lot more. And again, you can mess with the maximum depth with the frequency range to get some interesting sounds. The feedback, again, like the flanger, is like resonance, because how a phaser works is like a bunch of band stops, and you'll see what I'm talking about when I talk about filtering, which will be right after the phaser. There's different kind of filters, and the type of filtering that a phaser is just like a bunch of band stops. And again, you can mess with the dry wet, and out gain is like how much loud the signal will be once it comes out of the phaser. All right, and now we got through those basic effects, so we can go to the Parametric EQ 2, which will be like the EQ you use for mixing, and maybe you can even use it for filters because you can automate every parameter in here. Right here, you're going to see this is the matrix. The matrix lets you control the gain of two types of filters. Actually, three types. You have the high shelf, which is number 7. You have the low shelf, which is number 1. And the low shelf, as you can see, it brings the stuff up behind it. All the frequencies behind it, it'll bring it up to be louder. And high shelf will do the same, well, the opposite, but the same thing. It does the higher frequencies, and the stuff behind it will stay normal. And you can raise or lower frequencies. 2 through 6 are by default our peak filters. And you can see it just creates like a bell-shaped curve that will boost frequencies or take away. And if you scroll on these parameters, you can change the resonance or the width of the filter. As you can see, just by scrolling, I can widen it or make it skinnier. And this right here, because if you see me, I'm left clicking and scrolling to make changes to the EQ here. But if you ever want to automate any of these parameters, you can actually go over here and you can see this is the gain. This area here is the frequency where the filter is at, which is these row knobs, and the bandwidth is also resonance. So the width of the band of the filter you're using or the resonance of it. You can use either or words to describe it. And I'm going to load up a default EQ since I just kind of messed this one up to show you the other different types of filters. So if you right click on number 7 and go to type, you can see you have disabled, will just get rid of the band, low pass, band pass, high pass, band stop, which is the phaser, low shelf, peaking, and high shelf. And peaking is what 2 through 6 were. High shelf is number 7, and then low shelf was number 1. But I'm going to show you what a low pass is. The low pass you're going to find in like almost every synth ever because it's just such a commonly used filter. It takes away higher frequencies, as you can see. And to make it more effective of a filter, you can turn up the bandwidth or the resonance to accentuate the frequency that you're cutting off more. And again, you can automate these knobs, but notice that the gain goes away because when you're using like a band stop, band pass, high pass, low pass, and stuff like that, you can't move it up and down. You use the resonance to change how high or low the frequency is, or you can put peak filters on top of it if you want to accentuate it harder at different spots and whatnot. And now that you see the low pass and you're familiar with that, I'm going to go to default again. I'm going to right click on number 1 and go to type and choose high pass. And the high pass is the opposite of a low pass. It takes away low frequencies. And again, you can use resonance to accentuate the cutoff point. And also, FL Studio has this nice thing called the orders. And you can change the order by scrolling under the filter shape, because you can change filter shapes by scrolling through the very top shape. And you have the orders, which changes the filter shape. So if I go to order, you can see it has steep and gentle, and 2, which is the regular mode. Well, the gentle mode does is it allows you to change how hard the filter shape is, but gentle will still have bleeding after the filter, so there's still some of the frequencies behind it after you cut. And steep, if you go to order and choose the steeps, it will get rid of the frequencies behind it. There will be no bleeding behind the filter, and that's the difference between the gentle and the steep type of filter choices you have. And you can just go through these and see like steep 8 is very hard of a cutoff point. I like to use the steeps when I'm cutting off frequencies while mixing. And then I use order for like if I want bleed and I'm doing some filter modulations and whatnot. But yeah, there was the high pass, low pass, and now we're gonna talk about the bandpass, which is a combination of a high pass, see it cuts low frequencies, and a low pass because it cuts off high frequencies. So you can just filter a band of audio. And again, you can change the order to change the shape. And I also recommend heavy compression after using a bandpass if you want to do some filter modulations. And modulating is just like moving filters around. But I recommend heavy compression, which we'll get into after this, or distortion after the filtering, because it takes away a lot of the level and the sounds. And to bring it back, you can use compression and distortion to bring back a lot of the signal. But we'll get into compression at the end. But yeah, you have your bandpass filter, and then I can right click this or change this into a band stop, which is like the phaser shape. And you can see it puts holes in the sound. And you could like turn all these guys into band stops and just go crazy. And automate them doing different things. You could have one going up here, one down here. And maybe even have like a band pass. And then these guys go through the band pass. And which guy's my band stop? Oh yeah, they're there. 6 and 4. And you can see it creates holes in the band pass, which you can get cool sounds out of. But yeah, those are some things you can do with the EQ, and those are all the different types of filters. And now that you're familiar with what the filters look like and what they do, when you use something like Fruity Love Filter, as soon as you load it up, you have 8 filters you can use, and it just has the first one, engage. And what the other 8 do, you can like do filtering in one part, and then send the audio signal into another filter, and another filter, and so on. But most of the time, you're just going to use one filter for because you really don't need a huge chain, but if you want to, you can. And a nice thing about the Fruity Love filter as well is it has a built-in wave shaper, which you're familiar with this. It's the same interface as the Fruity Wave Shaper because it's the same thing. It's just built in the Love filter, which is really nice. And so you're given this when you load up the Fruity Love filter. You have your cut, resonance, and you see there's L, B, and H. Well, this is a low pass filter, bandpass filter, and high pass filter. And the first thing that loads up is this filter type, which is called the chocolate state variable, which just allows you to mix a combination of bandpass, low pass, and high pass, or you can just use one of the ones that are loaded up. What I usually do, because I usually don't use this shape, is I'll right click and I can choose like just a low pass or band pass, band stop, and they have different filters here you can go and look through. And you see how there's like lime low pass, vanilla low pass, and all that stuff. That's just like a different filter shape. And they're all different. You can just experiment and find what you like. But what I like to do with the Fruity Love filter is I have it at normal mode. I change the filter to like a low pass, and I leave the cut and resonance in the middle. And then down here you see I have pan, volume, cut, resonance, low. This is just like different envelope sections that can use to control different parameters. So when I go to cut, I'm going to be looking at what I can do to this knob. And I have mod X. So what this lets me do is where X is on the matrix over here, you can see it moves along here. So if I move this down here and this up here, that's going to be telling because the cut is the middle of this graph where it is on here. And I move X down, it's actually like moving the cut down to the bottom, and I move it all the way up. It's like moving this cut knob all the way up. So to show you what it sounds like, that's what that will sound like. And also I recommend turning smoothing off. Smoothing off will just like smooth out your automation. And if you want to make some really fast, sharp automations, smoothing will like smooth out the automation so it's not as rough or edgy as you want it. And if you want like a rougher, edgier automation, turn smoothing off. But you can also do this to the volume. You can like have, say you want it quieter when the filter's down. You can say, I want it panned to the left and then right when I move the sound. And make it like more extreme. You can just. And you can hear how it just travels between the ears. And then you also can do that with resonance. And you can also notice that, oh, here's the band, low, band, and high, because you could control, if you're back in chocolate mode, you can control each filter. You have the wave shaper here. We can change the distortion profile, and you can turn it on by hitting this button. The out is how hard you're going to be pushing the signal of the wave shaper. The mix is how much of the wave shaper signal you have. And then this button here switches between asymmetrical mode and unipolar mode. Also, asymmetrical is also known as bipolar. So if you look at the top left, you can see the regular is unipolar, which controls the whole waveform, and then asymmetrical or bipolar. And that allows you to distort both sides of the waveform. And yeah, you can also do an LFO. So I'm just open up a default since I messed this one up. Go back to the cut, turn on the LFO by hitting this button. If you ever want to turn on like an LFO, or you're ever editing a parameter in FL Studio and it's not working, you gotta make sure this button down here is engaged. But yeah, you can create different LFOs. And as you can see, it's a pretty cool tool. You can just use an LFO if you don't want to automate, and you can just have an LFO constantly running for your sound. And you can also have it tempo synced, so the LFO is doing like quarter notes, half notes, 16th notes, 8th notes, and all that stuff. So it's a pretty handy feature. And you have all these different parameters. You can also use mod Y. So you could have the cut on X, the resonance on Y if you want to automate them separately, or have just two different controls going on. And yeah, you can experiment with the Love filter a lot and look through the presets and see the potential of the Love filter. And this is just a filter on a saw wave. This is called a Yuck Yuck. But yeah, there's a lot of possibilities with that. Now that I talked about filtering, I'm going to talk about Vocodex or Vocoding. So if you ever want to achieve like a robot sound on a vocal,
Do it, feel it.
I'm just going to load up a sample in the track
Feel it.
by dragging and dropping it in here. And then I'm going to give it its own mixer channel. So I double clicked on it and then I found it right here, loaded up the sample, and I hit track. So now it has its own channel. I'm going to rename it Vocoder Mod, because when you use a vocoder, there's a modulator and a carrier. A carrier is usually a synth or an instrument, and the vocoder, the modulator, is usually a voice. And a carrier the modulator, which is a voice or whatever you want to use, is modulating the carrier. And to understand what this does, I'm just going to show you instead of using words to explain. So I'm going to get a synth, like 3XOSC. I'm going to make a super saw with it, because super saws sound really good for vocoding, as you're about to find out. And I'm going to rename this 3XOSC vocoder carrier. And I'm going to give it a piano roll. Let's write in some chords. Let's do like a... Let's do a chord progression. So I'm going to quickly put in these notes. There we go. And I'll just do that 4-bar loop of chords. Alright, that's the chord progression for the carrier, for the super saw. I'm going to put it in the track here. And I'm gonna route the vocoder. Oh, it's already routed. It's number 6, but I'm gonna rename it in here so I know. Carrier. And then, as you can see, every channel, when you load it up in a mixer track in the mixer of FL Studio, every channel is pre-routed to the master, and you can see that because everything, when you click on it, it has a green cord going to the master. And when you're trying to do a vocode, you just have to understand mixer routing a little bit. What you have to do is you have to get both the vocoder carrier and the modulator in the same mixer track. And to do that, you hit this green arrow to turn it off from the master. And you find an empty channel. You put the carrier in there, and you do the same thing with the modulator. You put it in the same mixer track as the carrier, and you turn it off from the master. And then you just rename that mixer track Vocodex or vocoder or whatever. Vocodex is the name of the vocoder of ImageLine. That's why I keep saying it. And then you load up Vocodex in that mixer track, and which is right here. And once you have Vocodex loaded, you'll right-click on modulator and make sure it's your vocoder mod, and you right-click on the carrier, which is right here, and choose carrier. And now, when the modulator is talking, I'm gonna just put it right there. The carrier, the synth, will modulate on of the carrier of what the super saws are doing, and this is how you achieve that robot voice. I'm gonna drop it an octave so it sounds a little more natural. And as you can see, it kind of has that robot sound, and you can actually like go really crazy with Vocodex. It's like one of the most powerful vocoders out there. And with Vocodex, you can like go to it. You have all these different equalizer options. You can mess with the bands of the sound. You can choose how many bands there are. The more bands you have, the more fluid the sound will be, and the less you have, it gets more robot. You can change the width of the bands. The skinnier you get, it sounds really tinny. You can, this knob here, you can make it sound more male or more female. This is a bandwidth multiplier. And you can just mess with this knob to change the tone of your vocoder. And here, this is like a unison. You can have like 5 voices of a Vocodex going. And this is the mix between like just one voice and then the rest of the 5. And right here, you see this knob. This is how mono the voices are. And this is how much stereo separation there is. When you go left, it's stereo separation. And when you go right, it's going to be more mono. Remember, mono is the middle, and then stereo gives it that wide effect. And I don't want to get too into depth into Vocodex. I'm going to recommend, check it out, SeamlessR's channel. I know I recommend his channel a lot, but that's because he's already done like really in-depth, taking apart all these plugins and tells you basically what everything is and how it does and how it works. And he does a really good job explaining it too, so I'm just going to recommend you go check out his channels if you want to understand how these plugins work inside and out. So I don't have to make this video any longer than it already is because it's an extremely long video. I'm trying to cover every basic effect there is when you post-process a synth or anything. And yeah, but he has a lot of good videos. He goes into depth. So go check him out, SeamlessR, here on YouTube. And he does a great job of explaining these plugins. So yeah, that's the vocoder. If you ever want to make it sound good though, I always put like delay and reverb, or just one or the other. You can see it just starts to already sell the voice a little bit more. But yeah, you can get really creative with the vocoder if you ever want to achieve that robot sound. sometimes people confuse auto-tuning with vocoding, and they're different things. Auto-tuning will just change the pitch of the sound and the format if you can make them sound more female or male. And vocoding is when you have a carrier and a modulator and you create that robot sound or any other kind of sound. You can also create really monstrous basses, and Seamless does a good job showing that too, to no surprise. But yeah, that's how you use Vocodecks. And last but not least, I'm going to talk about compression briefly, because I could go on for a long time about that too. So to keep, for the sake of this video, keeping it any longer than it already is, I'm just going to briefly cover it. So I got my Sine Wave, give it a mixer track. Actually, I'm going to put it in 6 because I have the EQ and Wave Candy there. So put that in 6. Rename this 3XOSE. And I'm going to unroute it from the vocoder and back to master. There we go. So for compression, you have FL Studio gives a couple options. You have, if I can find it, it's dynamics. Right here, you have the compressor, limiter, multi-band compressor, Saath Clipper, which is like, Saath Clipper is distortion, but does compress the signal. Distortion does compress the signal. It's controlled clipping. That's what distortion really is. But a compressor is like distortion, but with time variables. And that's a way to say kind of what it can be. You can use it that way, but really it's used to control dynamic range. And how loudness is achieved in songs, you always hear about the loudness wars. That's people finding ways to make their tracks loud as possible and achieve a really loud track. It's about reducing dynamic range. So the less quiet parts there is in the song, and the closer they're slammed towards the top of the song just appears louder, even though it never goes past 0 dB like another song. It'll just appear louder because there's less dynamic range happening, and that's how loudness is achieved. But you have the best, in my opinion, FL Studio has for compression is Maximus, which is a multi-band compressor. As you can see, it lets you compress 3 individual bands. You have your lows, mids, and highs. And after you compress those 3 different bands, you can compress the whole thing through the master, which is really useful. But if you don't want to do all 3 bands and just want to use something that's a little simpler for compression, you can use the Fruity limiter or the Fruity compressor. It's up to you. But you can use the limiter by just going to the compression side and compress the signal that way. And I could get into a longer talk about compression, but for the sake of keeping this video short, I'm just going to tell you again, check out SeamlessR's channel. He does a great job explaining Fruity Limiter and Fruity Maximus. So go check that out. And another neat thing about the Fruity Limiter here is if you see this thing called sidechain, you can use the Fruity Limiter for sidechain compression, which you use to get the ducking effect or the pumping effect in the EDM track. And actually, you can go check out a video by clicking on the link here in the video or in the description, depending if you're on mobile, to check out a video where I talk about different ways you can sidechain in FL Studio. And sidechain compression with the limiter is one of those ways I show off, so you can go check that out if you're interested. And yeah, so those are basically all the effects in FL Studio. They have a few miscellaneous effects, so if you look in the gain section here, this thing called Parametric is pretty cool. You can use an LFO to, as you can see it's off right now, but if you turn it on, you can choose panning or volume. The amount is how much the LFO will do this automation, and the speed is how fast it goes. So on panning, it does the tremolo effect, like left and right, and then it does it with volume as well, which is another tremolo effect. You can change it to LFO to a triangle, and a square will just go on and off. And that's pretty cool. And then you have volume and pan up here, which are just literally volume and panning controls. I'll just turn LFO off so you can see. And you can also control it in the matrix here by doing that. But that's the Panomatic, which is one of the cool miscellaneous ones. A useful one it's a very powerful tool if you use it carefully as a stereo enhancer. And what it does, it'll copy the signal and it'll give it that stereo effect. You can choose left or right for the phase offset. You got your panning and volume here. And this is stereo separation knob that you've seen before, where the left is more stereo separation and the right is more mono. And this can be a very powerful tool for like if you want to make your chords more wide and lush. But you also got to be very careful because it's hard. I mean, it's really easy to misuse the stereo shaper. And if you don't use it right, you can, when you like bounce out your track, because it has this great stereo width when you listen to the headphones, when you bounce it out and you listen to it like through your laptop speaker or your phone speaker, you might notice that stuff would be really quiet, even though it sounds loud on headphones because you didn't do the stereo separation right. So you just gotta be careful with that tool, but it is very powerful when used correctly. And a very cool plugin that you should check out the FL Studio has. I'm just gonna make a quick bass line or something here. Let's just do a whole note. This thing called Gross Beat. It has volume automation. It has like gates and you can sidechain with it.
Feel it.
And I should just turn on pattern. You can see it does these cool volume automations. You can turn empty to get rid of it, and it also has time manipulation. So it actually manipulates the time of the incoming audio signal. And that's basically like what a DJ would do when he disc scratches a song. But that's what this wheel up here is. It's changing the time of the audio signal in real time. As you can see, you can make it sound like a DJ scratch in one of these presets. I'll just go to empty and kind of draw one. Yeah, you can kind of get like scratches and stuff like that. Because that's what they're doing when they scratch a record, is they're just manipulating the time of the record that's playing. And Gross Beat lets you do that. You can mess around with the presets and see what it does. It's a very unique plugin that's definitely worth checking out. It'll be very helpful if you want to make glitch hop, because you can like really just mess up audio with Gross Beat, and it's pretty fun just to draw different stuff to mess with audio. And if you ever want to get more in depth, because you can do a lot of cool things with Gross Beat, again, SeamlessR. Great tutorials. I don't need to regurgitate what he says. He does it perfectly. So yeah, go check him out. There's definitely a link in the description, so go look at him. But yeah, so those are basically most of the effects in FL Studio, all the basic ones. If you have any questions about anything I just said, please let me know. I tried to do my best to explain everything the best I could. Also, I actually have a free pack that you can download where I use all 3x OSC and post-processing to make 4 different styles of music. I did trance, house, acid house, and future bass, all using 3x OSC and post-processing to show you what power you have in your hands of what I just taught you. Because I used everything I just showed here to make like the 4 different styles of songs: vocoding, flanger, phaser, delay, reverb, everything, distortion. And I use that to make those 4 different styles of tracks, and you can go look at it. I even made a lot of the percussion with 3x OSC, and all the synths are 3x OSC. I used a few samples for like cymbals and then like the future bass snare, and I use a sample for the modulator, the vocoder. But all the synths are 3x OSC, and most of the percussion is 3x OSC as well. So if you want to like learn how to make different sounds with 3x OSC and post-processing out of what I just taught you, you can go and check out the other video where I talk about the project that I made where it's all 3x OSC and all that. So I go recommend checking that out if you liked a free FLP for free 3x OSC sounds, and you can see how they're made, whether you want to use them or just study them or both. You can go check that out. And yeah, so thank you for watching. Go check out that video if you like. If you found this video helpful, please subscribe for more content like this. Leave a like if it was helpful. Leave questions if you have any questions. And you might have noticed in the video that my shirt changed. That's because I recorded this yesterday, but my audio recording software messed up, so I had to cut it and I started over, and now I'm here. But yeah, that's that. Thank you for watching. Go and check out that video. And if you're looking for a helpful community that will help you on your FL production journey, go check out this Facebook group called FL Beginners. And it's a friendly community of people learning FL Studio, and we're there to help each other out as they go on their production journey. But yeah, this video is long enough. Thank you if you stayed all the way through, and I'll see you later.